Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. We're getting live training here. I'm just making sure I'm squared away. Looks like I am. I'm good there. Let me turn off all this text stuff before we start the training. And if somebody can throw me an AV check, I always appreciate that. I like to start these trainings off before we get to the official thing with giving just a little insight into me. I'm always talking about just government contracting, but I figure I'd just share a little bit about me. And so here's something from today. I've been doing this 5 days now. Today, one of the things I want to just share is that if you don't know this, I grew up in San Francisco, and my first job, in what I consider a job, right, is where you get paid money and you have a set of responsibilities that's continuous, not one lawn mowing kind of thing. So my first job was, I was 10 years old delivering newspapers in San Francisco. My twin brother and I kind of had a joint job. And when you look back at what this job was like, we were 10 years old, skinny little kids, going out at 5 a.m. in pitch dark in the cities in San Francisco, in the streets of San Francisco, delivering newspapers everywhere. And you would think that's kind of, an interesting challenge. But what was way worse and scarier than being, dark of night at 5 a.m. was going in the wintertime, making collections house to house, going into a house where there's all these trees, no one knows where you're at, you're just walking into houses. And I can't really imagine parents doing that today, saying, hey, just go on around. But that was my first job, and it taught me a ton about, discipline of just getting up and delivering the newspapers and the collection, having to process the money. So I think that started me down this journey that put me on entrepreneurial journey. Okay, again, I'm looking for an AV check. I don't know why, but I feel like I'm almost 2 or 3 minutes delayed in this technology, and it drives me nuts because I don't want to talk if I can't see you, and I'm just going to actually close that off. If I can get maybe a text from somebody, that would even be better. It's a little faster. So let me just assume that the technology is working. We're going to get started with training. In today's training, I want to talk about the Federal Sales Lifecycle and how you can succeed in there. One of the best ways to succeed selling is to understand how buying is done. And I really want to point out that the federal government, in particular the federal buyers, right, they follow a real clear process. I love this about the federal government because as they go forward, I know their acquisition lifecycle, their process from initial requirement until contract award, right? And what I want you to keep in mind is that your sales activities, your sales efforts should overlay on top of the government's acquisition lifecycle or acquisition process. You want to align your activities to their activities. And when you do that, then you're able to start seeing like an opportunity you're trying to chase. You can see where they're at, where that opportunity is in the journey, and make sure that you're doing enough on the sales side as well. Thanks for those sound checks out there. Let me go ahead and share my slides, and we'll just get rocking and rolling, talking deeper about the federal sales lifecycle and what you should be thinking about. The big thing I want you to remember about sales, just in general across the board, sales is a proactive approach to winning. It is not a reactive approach. It's really important that we keep that in mind because when we say it's a proactive approach, it means we're doing something to make something happen, and we're not just waiting for it to happen. The opposite of that is a reactive approach, right? And so in a reactive approach in federal sales is an example is to see an RFP when it drops and then responding to it. You might see it as SAM.gov, or you might actually have a contract vehicle like Seaport Next Gen or GSA or whatever, and you see it in that contract vehicle, and then you're responding. Well, even though the competition is reduced from 300,000 businesses down to, let's say, 1,000 or 2,000 on Seaport Next Gen, you're still in this reactive mode. I don't want to sit there and say that you shouldn't do that. I'm totally okay with you going after an opportunity if you see it at the last minute, but that's a reactive way of doing business. And so that's not a really ideal way of doing business. That can be 10%. The other 90% should be proactive. We should really be driving in the direction we want. One of the downsides of a reactive approach to business is that if the RFP drops and that's when you see it, you're behind the curve, right? You're hearing about the opportunity at the last possible minute. You're behind anybody who did capture, me and people who are like me, who are putting opportunities 6, 24 months out and chasing them and trying to win them, right? You're behind any of us who have been able to get into the government and have conversations. And you're kind of stuck in this position where you're the only one who, the only information you have is what you're seeing right there in that document. And that document is a sanitized document, that RFP. It's a sanitized document compared to the opposite, right? If I hear about an opportunity at the very earliest stage, which I'll talk about, then I have a chance to get in and talk to the government, the contracting officer, the program officers, et cetera. And I can hear stuff that won't be in the paperwork, right? They're not giving me secrets, but you're able to just pull a thread. You're saying, well, what about this? What about that? The minute an opportunity gets to the RFP stage, even a little bit before, the conversation's locked down. And so when you get in there early and have a proactive approach, you can have a lot more conversation with the buyer. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonald. I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market as a small business owner. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow the process A to Z, we're going to have repeatable, predictable results. And that's what I want for you. I know that's what you want for yourself, right? Is a pipeline that leads to predictable revenue. And when you follow a process, you're going to sit there and have that predictable revenue. I don't know if you've already subscribed to my newsletter, but please do that. Government Contracting Success Newsletter. This newsletter is where we share even more information about government contracting. There's just so much information that we put out that I think would be helpful in your sales activity, right? I don't just put it out for the sake of putting it out. I just put something out today, and it literally was guiding you down this path of how to get into the Army on the sustainment and supply chain logistics side, right? Well, if you miss that, then I'm summarizing those in a newsletter. And then other times in the newsletter, I put sales and business development capture tips and roadmaps, et cetera. So make sure you subscribe to that newsletter if you're feeling extra generous. If you get a newsletter and you like it, send it to 2 or 3 friends, and we'd appreciate that, but I'm sure they'd appreciate it as well. On the right-hand side, you see a little red box that says register for training. If you're here today and one of the 100 people who registered, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. If you're not, I'm about to put out 5 more trainings for next week. And so you'll have the opportunity to register for those. And I ask that you do. When you register to attend, first off, it's an easy way to say thank you to me, right? Because I love this. LinkedIn lets other people know that we're doing this training. We can help more and more people. The other reason it's helpful is because LinkedIn will remind you of the training and let you know that it's coming up. And the last thing is, don't come to the training alone. If you like today's training, invite a friend next time. Okay, so let's get rocking and rolling. On the left-hand side, you can see that I'm going to cover down on a high-level set of overview of the federal sales process. This is not a deep dive into any one of these, by the way, because I have multiple trainings for each one of the bullets you see on the left-hand side: business development, capture, proposal. And actually, I was going to put a guide there, but I didn't do that. So I might send that after the fact if you put guide. Let me ask you really quick before I go forward. In the chat, just tell me if you had to say which one was the toughest for you. Is it business development, capture management, or proposal writing, proposal management, et cetera? Put one of those words, BD, capture, or proposal, into the chat to let me know which one's the most challenging for your company. Okay, so I wanted to begin with this chart. I thought it'd be an ideal place to begin because I said, if you want to be good at sales, then make sure you understand the buying process. Your sales life cycle should align to how your customer buys. And so this diagram is from USDA. I did a whole kind of training on earlier in the week that I really love because it lays out how does the government buy. And this is not just USDA, right? This colorful one is theirs, but this is fundamentally how the government buys. I'm not going to go too far into it, but the idea is they have a requirement. They start exploring that requirement. They start doing some market survey to see if industry's got input onto the technical requirements and if they might be able to find people to bid on it. And then they go through and shape the whole acquisition. You can see all that going forward. The reason this is important is when you have a target agency, you want to make sure you understand their buying process. This is one of the questions I would ask when I'm doing business development in particular. And I can do it in capture if I'm that late, but I want to know my target agency. For example, DLA, I'm in there with a particular customer. What is your buying process? What's your life cycle? And I don't want you to ramble it off. They have diagrams like this. And that's business development is about trying to find this document. So let me talk about federal sales lifecycle from a couple different diagrams that I have. And I just thought these would be helpful to look at because the idea is I want to align my sales lifecycle to the government buying process. And this is where I begin to do this. If you look at the RFP phase right here above the word formal in the center of the screen, this is where I said it was too late. If you're at this stage, it's reactive. And so what you want to do is be participating earlier on. So if I go one step ahead or to the left, it's market research. And this is still formal, part of the formal acquisition process. And so you can think RFIs, sources sought, et cetera. And what I want to point out here is that's the time to influence the government the most. And when I say influence, I don't mean you're going to twist their arm. I mean you're going to have discussions with them. If you have a conversation with the contracting officer, they're going to hear you and go, that makes sense. Maybe I'll consider that, right? And I'll talk more about how to do that or what to do that on specifically. But in this stage, when you're in the market research, this is RFI and sources sought responding. This is where small businesses hurt themselves. Small businesses sometimes sit there and say, I never win anything off of responding to sources sought or RFIs, so I'm not going to do it. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of money. This is the part in 2024 that I would highly recommend you recommit to. And you go, you know what? Forget about whatever my past experience is. I'm coming here. If you only respond to your target agency, if you only respond to your core competency, what I call your slam dunk opportunity, and if you respond over and over again, I guarantee you're going to win, right? If you're in an agency like the Army and you're responding and you're writing about cybersecurity in a particular risk management framework, you're going to get known because it's not just the small business specialist seeing you. It's not just the contracting officer seeing you, but it's also the program office seeing you. So you want to participate. If you're not winning and you're not being brought back in, then I would, my first thing that I look for is, are you writing to stuff that's outside of your core competency, outside of your slam dunk opportunity? If you can come in and write to your, write to RFI responses write RFI responses and sources sought responses in your area of expertise, you will impress the contracting officer and other people in the government enough so that you can get in and start having conversations, which allows you to shift left a little bit more to this whole informal stage. And I have a whole separate training, so I'm not going to dive into it here. But this is the idea where you get in before it's even the contracting officer is really even getting involved. I just talked with a company this morning who does artificial intelligence, like truly does artificial intelligence, not just ChatGPT and using it, right? And so they can come in and help the government do certain things. And what I was telling them is, you want to get in and have conversations and give people aha moments, that idea. You don't want to respond to the government's idea. You want to be in there early enough. And this is business development, right? Being in there early enough to be able to give them the very ideas they should be thinking about, right? I know you've been using linoleum for 100 years, but I recommend you use bamboo flooring, for example. And I don't know anything about flooring, but I recommend you use bamboo flooring because it reduces the cost by 10%. But more importantly, studies have shown that people's feet feel so much better or something, whatever, right? And that's discussions with the program office. That is this informal area. And this is this area where business development and capture come together. Let me show it to you another way. And hopefully this diagram is very familiar to you. This is the 7-step process that I teach for success in government contracting. And there's 2 sections, right? There's this path to relationships. And then when you hit relationships on this wheel, you are now on a wheel of success. And I say, once you're on it, it's pretty impossible to get off it. And then it's only going to lead to continued success. Of course, I'm simplifying it, but that's the whole point, right? You have what you need to succeed. You just got to follow a process and get better and better at the process to lead to success. And so this 7-step process, business development, this is all business development basically the first time I'm showing you, right? Research, getting in there and understanding the buyer, and then trying to identify people you want to talk to, and then reaching out to them, that cold call. You're trying to break into an industry. And I've done previous training on this that you can go look at our past training. But when you do outreach, you're identifying the right people to build strategic relationships with. You don't want to know everybody. You want to know about 8 to 16 people. When you know that many people, you're able to really understand an agency and begin to get in there. The one thing I want to talk about as I move forward, these processes that I teach are designed to work with 1-person company or 100-person company or more. The whole point of it is to not burden ourselves with too much work. If you're not making enough money that you could be full-time business development salesperson, then you need to be subcontracting under small businesses. It'll reduce the workload on you, but allow you to focus on your subject matter expertise. And so as we go forward and we talk about some of this stuff, just keep this in mind. This same process, by the way, that I'm showing, it can be modified a little bit for the path for relationship. If I identify an opportunity, then I'm going to research the agency around one single opportunity, not the whole agency. I'm going to identify targeting. I want to build a list of 15, 20 people related to that opportunity. And then I'm going to start calling those people related to that opportunity so I can develop relationships with potential selection board folks or potential teammates or potential competitors. I can develop that. And the opportunities, in this point, it goes into more solutioning or something, but it's the same process, basically. You need to understand, develop relationships, and get on that wheel of success. Okay, so let's talk about business development the way I teach it. And I only got 15 minutes left, right? So I go through at a very fast pace. Each one of these things I'm talking about, I have an additional separate training that's broken out where I dive deep into certain things. But I just wanted to start from a high level and talk about business development, right? Business development is the first stage of the federal sales lifecycle. And I'm sorry I didn't put a graphic in here, but the federal sales lifecycle, the way I teach it, right, is it begins with business development, it moves on to capture, and it goes to proposal. It really is that straightforward. And we'll talk more about that. So business development for me covers down on three things, right? Business development, if I have a brand new person, I'm teaching them business development, I'm saying, here's what you need to do. I need you to get in there and understand an agency. I need you to build relationships, and I need you to identify opportunities. It literally is that straightforward. That's what I want from a business developer. Your job is to get in there and move that around. That's a different skill set than a capture person, which we'll talk about in a minute. But a business developer is almost that social butterfly that likes moving around everywhere. Capture is a lot more tactical than a business developer. And so when I say understanding an agency, I want to break these points down. And today I'm going to use the Army as an example and additive manufacturing, because I got a customer. Actually, I'm sorry, I should put DLA, not Army. I got a customer doing additive manufacturing, and we're talking about going into DLA to pursue that, right? And so when I look at an agency and I'm trying to understand them, I always say, you want to understand the agency better than they understand themselves. That's totally possible. I had an intern several years back who was under me, and I was mentoring them. And within their second 30 days, they had information that the people they were calling at an agency didn't have. And those people were like, hey, can you share that information? Imagine the authority shifting, right? Where it's not who's in charge, but it's just like, hey, I'm willing to listen to you now because you got information we didn't have. And that comes from doing research, right? Step one in a 7-step process to understand the agency. So here, I want to understand, what's the purpose of DLA? How does DLA interact with the military services that are out there, right? It's one thing to go, they buy a lot of stuff, there's dibs and blah, 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 but there's another to truly understand, what are they doing? To truly understand that DoD sees the supply chain as a national security issue. We need to make sure that supply chain is strong and impenetrable, right? However you say that word fully. And so that's understanding the mission and the purpose. And then goals and objectives. What is that agency trying to do? Not just this program office, but when I do business development, I'm looking at the agency. If I want to sell the DLA, of course, I want to go after these particular opportunities, but I want to understand the agency mission. I want to understand the subordinate commands within DLA and how they fit together so that I just have awareness. I care about that customer. I want millions and millions and millions of dollars from them at some point in the years forward. Well, I should commit to understanding what they're doing so I don't become a vendor to DLA. I become a strategic partner to DLA. So goals and objectives, this is where sometimes when you look at an opportunity, they have their own goals and objectives, but you want to look at the top agency priorities, their strategic goals. Inside of every goal, they have objectives and activity that's leading to those objectives being achieved. You want to understand what they are. The reason I say this is because you want to take your company and align it to the goals that you can support. You can't support every one of DLA's goals, for example, but when you look in, you're like, oh, I see, I could support this. Now, when you have meetings in the future, you're talking their language. You're talking to their priorities. You're not talking to your product. And this going with those goals and objectives, you want to understand the agency challenges. Often, one of my most favorite documents is an OIG report of management challenges faced by an agency. Go watch the training I've done, or just go to your agency and type into their search bar management challenges, and you'd be amazed at what comes back. Like the frank discussion the agency is having with itself, with where it has challenges. And to me, that's where industry can help. And then building relationships, right? And here, I'm going to go a little faster, but The second purpose of business development is I want you to start building relationships. First, you understand them. So then when you start reaching out and trying to have those first meetings, you're trying to build relationships in particular with the government. And I put FRFTFP. What that stands for is focus and receptivity. These are friendly people who will just talk to you about the agency, but they really have no power or need. The second group is focus as dissatisfaction. These are the program office people usually, right? They're the ones that have the need, and focus is a power in the government as contracting officers. These are the ones that can sign the contract and award it to you. When I'm trying to go into DLA, sticking with that example, I want to find complementary businesses that are winning in DLA that are small businesses and large businesses. So if I look at additive manufacturing, I want to go, well, what businesses that are in there that are doing something that might be related? Maybe they're selling parts, and additive manufacturing and 3D printing might be able to print those parts, right? Maybe we can come together and jointly go after more work together, et cetera. And so building relationships, I want to build relationships from many angles. And through those relationships, I will be able to identify opportunities. When I'm talking to the small business specialist, when I'm talking with a contracting officer, I'm going to hear about short-term opportunities, even 12 months short-term. And when I'm talking to the program office, I'm going to hear them talk about maybe even their 5-year, 10-year view. I used to work with a customer in DOD, and on the back wall of my customer boss's office was a 10-year plan of all these things they were trying to do. And I swear it was like picking candy off it, right? That's the value of being an incumbent. But if you're doing business development, the next best thing is to try to get in there and have conversations about what are you trying to do over the next year that we can help you with? And then what are you doing next year and the year after? Okay, let's talk about capture management. And I see I'm probably going to have more slides than I can cover down on. But if business development is about understanding an agency, building relationships, and identifying opportunities, right? Big picture around an agency, then capture management, or capture, is the way I describe it, is increasing the likelihood of winning a single opportunity. So the idea here is if business development is helping me identify slam dunk opportunities that are good to go into our pipeline, then from a capture standpoint, and most times with small businesses, by the way, it's the same person doing BD and capture. I get that. It literally should not be the same person writing a proposal. It's better to outsource that or something if you can. But the idea of business development and capture being that same person, that totally makes sense in a small business under even 20 million, right? But the idea is when you have opportunities in your pipeline, you take the most important one and you say, hey, let me start shaping that in a way that increases our likelihood of winning. That's the whole reason an opportunity is in the pipeline, is so that we can increase the likelihood of winning. There's a lot of other ways to describe it, but fundamentally that's it. And so we want to fully understand the customer's goals and challenges around this opportunity. We'll see some of that in the statement of work or some of the documentation, but capture is about exploring that with the customer, right? I noticed it said this. What are you thinking about this? Especially if you get in early. You're talking about 6, 12 months before an opportunity's RFP drops. You can have these conversations. I noticed in the OIG report, they said this. How's that impacting your office? You're beginning to understand these things. There's a proposal lead out there, expert, Juliet Fletcher. Somebody put her link in if you're feeling generous. She wrote a great post this morning that I love. She says, hey, I'm paraphrasing, but basically in order to write great proposals, we need this. And I loved it because I'm like, well, in order to write great proposals, capture needs to do this. And if you listen to a proposal writer and go, how do I help you write a stronger, more winning proposal? They'll tell you, and all you have to do is go do that. I want to understand the challenges and pains of the customers in order to put that in the proposal. Okay, let me go have meetings and ask them that. And by the way, experience is what you'll develop as you keep asking the questions over and over again to understand those challenges and pains. But in the very beginning, you could literally ask them, hey, I just wanted to ask you about your goals and your challenges, and let it go from there, right? When you're more experienced, you get a little bit better at pulling threads. Okay, so you in capture, you're trying to play up your strengths in everybody's mind on the government side. And so you're also trying to mitigate or reduce the chances of your weaknesses basically being in the RFP. If I do additive manufacturing, but I don't do it in with this particular technology, well, I want to stress in conversations that, hey, this technology is even better. You guys should really consider that. Or maybe I'm throwing in suggestions about certifications or something around it. So I'm minimizing this weakness that we have, that we couldn't afford this particular tool or something, right? Whatever your weaknesses are, if you know them, you're trying to reduce them out of the RFP or eliminate them out of the RFP. Competition, right? Capture is about eliminating the competition. I want to reduce the competition by trying to get the opportunity set aside to woman-owned small business. Takes it from 300,000 businesses down to like 10,000. And I want to discourage the competition. I want to get something like, you must be a Microsoft Gold certified provider in there. If I get that put in there, a lot of businesses are going to go, that's wired, I'm out of here. Even if they're gold certified, sometimes they'll just, I'm out of here. Whoever got that in there, somebody's ahead of it. And you don't have to do a lot of work to be justifying it, but these are through conversations. Again, when I say influence the government, I don't mean in a bad way. You have to justify why Microsoft Gold certified is necessary. Okay, and the last one I put here is that you want to maximize your winning proposal score. I don't like the idea of P-win. That whole term just was, it just seemed vague. Whenever the last 20 years, I've been in the government space doing this, and it just seemed vague. I'd see too many people make up the number. But a winning proposal score is literally based on the activity you do in capture. And every time you do something like gamification, you're getting score. You're increasing the winning proposal score. And the whole idea is you want to get a winning proposal score of 80% or higher. You don't want to guess at it. You want to know it's because of these certain things that are in place. And so just when you do capture, that's what you want to do. You can go check out training I have and just type in winning proposal score. And it's a whole separate 30-minute training just on that score. Here's some examples of shaping tasks, and I'm running out of time, so I just want to cruise forward really fast. But this idea is you can shape a lot in an opportunity, and the government can look at you and go, yeah, that ain't happening, right? But salespeople, capture people, our job is to get in there and try to shape as many things as we want. And so this is just a sample list of what I put here, but you want to have in your company, and it can start with one thing to begin with, but slowly but surely, you want to say, hey, we want to shape our opportunities always to try to get this. You know, if we don't get it, no big deal. But if we get even one or two, we're off to the races of eliminating competition. So an example, one of my favorite ones is oral evaluations, number 5. I want to get them to say, you must come in and talk to us. Because there's a lot of people who use writers who aren't going to go in and do the work, compared to if you're the expert, you can go in and wow them. They're like, I want you and your team. It's like, okay. Another one that I'll just leave here is, and I'm happy to share these slides today. I don't share slides, but because there's so much, I'm okay doing it today. So this one, number 8, is my favorite one. With page count, what I would recommend you try to do is like get them to reduce the page count. You know, you really can get a good response in 15 to 20 pages. That's hard for people. It's very hard. If the page count is 50 pages, anybody can fill 50 pages, but it's incredibly hard to fill 20 pages with 50 pages of value, right? So let me just, this one other thing, this is a pipeline. I'll show it to you later. But if you're newer to the sales pipeline, the idea is you're moving opportunities through the pipeline. Even if it's just you, it doesn't have to be that hard, right? You're just moving it saying, does it look like a fit? Is it guaranteed a fit? Okay, let me start shaping that opportunity. Let me start beginning to write the proposal. Let me write the proposal and send it out. I have a whole separate training on this one, but it was just a different way of looking at the pipeline. I just want to kind of come down here to the proposal. So if the 3 stages of the federal sales lifecycle are business development, capture, and proposal writing, what I say proposals about, right? And I'm not trying to speak from a proposal manager's way of speaking, but from a salesperson, the whole point of proposal writing is to deliver a winning proposal to the customer. That's it. As a boss, as a company owner, that's all I want. If you're pushing out proposals, I don't need volume. I need winning proposals going to the customer. If you're doing that, then our chances of winning 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4 at most opportunities are great, and it allows me to predict the revenue. So as you write proposals, just a quick tip for you is that remember that proposals need to be clear, compliant, compelling, and convincing. And if you're not on video, clear is no heavy jargon, compliant is all the shall statements, compelling is help them see the transformation, the vacation to Maui, Hawaii, right? And convincing is help them believe what you're saying the transformation is, that you are the ones to take them there. So here's what I want you to remember, just so I end on time. First thing is make sure you understand your customer's buying process, right? When you understand that, then follow your own proven sales process and align it to the buying process. The last thing is Get away from the RFPs dropping and being reactive. Be proactive by shifting left in the process. And speaking of a process, just remember, government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you in the next training.